Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look at installing the CURT Trailer Hitch Receiver on a 2024 Kia Telluride. Now this is what your hitch is going to look like when it's installed on your Kia, and the great part is it's a hidden cross tube, meaning the only thing that you're really going to see is the receiver tube opening. Now it does obviously require a little bit of trimming for this, but it's a really clean look when installed. Now this is a 2" by 2" receiver tube opening, which is kind of the standard when it comes to accessories. So when it comes to ball mounts, bike racks, cargo carriers, you're going to have tons of options available. Now all of them are going to stay in place with a 5/8 pin and clip. This is not included with the hitch. A lot of times when you pick up accessories, they'll have them included. If you want to get a locking pin and clip, it's a really nice option. If you plan on leaving the accessories on your vehicle, you can lock that in place and know that no one's going to walk away with it. Now on the bottom we have a rolled style safety chain loop, so when you're towing a trailer, your standard S hooks for your safety cables or even a larger clevis style is going to work on here. And speaking of towing, this has some pretty good weight capacities that you're going to want to adhere to when towing. You also want to check the vehicle's owner's manual to see what it's capable of towing and then compare it with not only the components of the hitch or the capacities of the hitch, but any component that you'll be using. Now, this one comes in with a gross trailer weight rating of 5,000 pounds, and that's pretty good. That's the weight of the trailer plus the accessories loaded up. You also have a tongue weight rating of 750 pounds, and that's going to be any suspended accessories. So your cargo carriers and bike racks, anything suspended on the hitch, 750 pounds is quite a bit. So you can get a 4-bike bike rack loaded up, a cargo carrier for vacation loaded up, and you won't have any issues. Now this can be used with a weight distribution hitch. If you need a little bit more on that gross trailer weight rating, with that hitch in place, you're going to get 6,000 pounds for your gross trailer weight rating. Tongue weight's going to stay the same at 750 pounds, but again, overall, those are some pretty good numbers. Now when choosing folding accessories like cargo carriers or bike racks, in the stowed position, they'll be vertical and you want to make sure they don't hit your rear fascia. And this one from the center of the hitch pin hole to the furthest point of the rear fascia is coming in at about 3.5 inches. So you should be okay to be able to stow those with no problem. Keep in mind when they're in the stowed position, more than likely you're not going to be able to open up that hatch, but if it's empty, you can just drop that down and still have access. Ground clearance is going to be important when choosing ball mounts. Now this one from the top of the receiver tube opening to the ground is 15.5 inches, which is great for any suspended accessories. It's going to keep them up off the ground a little bit more. But really, if you're planning on towing a trailer, you want to measure the coupler of the trailer and then take the measurement we just had, compare those, and that way you can determine that rise or drop to make sure that your trailer tow vehicle combo is nice and even. Now as far as installation goes, this one's pretty easy to do. You're going to be using some factory weld nuts that are already there to bolt that up, and then you're going to pass bolts that will go through the frame to give you that nice solid weight capacity of this hitch. And really you can do this in your driveway or garage, and I would say about an hour or so. You will need to lower the muffler down and remove a small panel, and there was a little bit of trimming just for clearance sake, but none of it's too terribly bad. And I'm going to walk you through all the steps to make sure you get yours installed. So let's take a look at it. To begin our installation, we're going to want to lower down our spare tire. That's going to give us more room to get our hitch up in place. And if you've never lowered your spare tire on your Telluride, it's pretty easy to do. You're just going to open up your hatch. And when you lift your cargo cover, you're going to find this cap that says spare tire, and it's going to have this nut. Now, you can use your spare tire tools that are located in this pouch to lower this down. There's an extension here, and then we have our wrench. We'll just go ahead and turn this counterclockwise until we get our spare tire lowered down. On our driver's side, we have this plastic underbody panel that we're going to want to remove as our hardware is going to pass up here. So we need to get this out of the way, and it's really easy. There's just 3 plastic push pins that we're going to remove first. And with these, they have little slots on them, so a flathead screwdriver works really well. Just kind of slide it in there, give it a quick turn, and we should be able to get this whole thing taken out. Now this will be going back up later. We may need to trim it, but hold on to this as well as the hardware throughout the whole process. It's going to make it a lot easier for reinstallation. So with those 3 taken out, there's also 2 14mm plastic nuts that are in these indents. And with these, you can almost get them by hand, but what I recommend is pulling down on it as you're loosening it, because otherwise it'll want to push back up on those threads. So keeping that pressure will separate this. And we'll set this aside. Now we're also going to lower down our muffler for the same reason. We need that clearance to be able to get our hitch up and also the hardware. Now, we're on a lift, obviously, to make it easier for you all at home to see, but if you're doing this in your driveway or garage, you can support your exhaust with a box or a block of wood, anything basically where it's not free hanging. You don't want to damage anything downstream, so I'm using a cam buckle strap just to kind of run across our suspension to create a nice little cradle. And there's going to be 3 isolators that we're going to focus on. The first one is going to be right here. And sometimes these can get a little bit tricky to pry off. This one's pretty easy because you can use this as leverage with a pry bar or even a long flathead screwdriver. If you need to help it along to make it easier for taking it off or when you put it back on, a soapy water solution just with dish soap is going to help lubricate this and make it a little bit easier to get removed. So we have this one here. There's also one tucked behind the muffler, and you can use that bracket. It's nice and wide for a leverage point to get this pried off. We also have this hanger here on our cross member, so we'll get this pried off as well. And if you need to, you can kind of wedge that flathead or pry bar in the isolator. These are pretty durable, so if it seems like you're going to rip it, you should be fine. They hold up quite well. And then just be careful once you loosen it because the exhaust is going to want to hang down. Now you will need to do some trimming on this underbody panel for the hitch to raise up into place to have that clearance. Now this panel can technically be removed. There's plastic push pins as well as screws that go into a bracket, but you may still need to do some trimming on those brackets for clearance. And you're going to have to leave this off. So it's going to leave the rest of it not looking so great. I think it's a better option to trim this and give you a cleaner look overall. Now I've gone ahead and used painter's tape. And the way that I do it, instead of just measuring or using the measurements in the instruction manual for the template, I mock the hitch up by kind of holding it in place and making those lines just to make sure that it's set up perfectly. Now you can always trim out a little bit more, but this will probably get us enough to where it'll clear. And as far as cutting it, you can use a pair of snips, Dremel, anything that you may have handy. We use an oscillating tool, which makes this really clean and easy. So I'll go ahead and get this cut out. And then once we get that cut out, we're going to go back with a file. You can use kind of a utility knife or a flat blade of some sort to get these burrs taken off. So take your time because this is the part that you may end up seeing once the hitch is installed. It's kind of hard to go back once the hitch is in the way. So if you need to, you can take a file and get all those burrs knocked down. Now before we get our hitch raised up, we want to make sure that our weld nuts don't have any corrosion or buildup in them. In a newer vehicle, you're really not going to run into too many issues. But as you know, driving in the Midwest here, we have lots of salt, and that can cause rust buildup, and that makes it really hard to get these started. So before you raise your hitch up in place, make sure that you can kind of hand thread these in. If you need to, you can draw them in with a socket, and if they're really bad, you might want to put some penetrating oil in there and then run your bolt through to kind of help knock any of that corrosion loose. So there's 2 on each side. Just make sure that your hardware goes in nice and smooth. So I've tested to make sure these all go up smooth. So at this point, we're going to get our hardware set up. You might want to grab an extra set of hands to raise the hitch up to get this in place. And what we're going to be looking for is threading these in just enough on one on each side just to hold the hitch up, and that'll make it easier for the rest of the hardware. The conical tooth washer has little teeth on it. That's going to bite into the metal of the hitch. So I would get these set up. You'll have 2 on each side, and that way when we put that in place, we can get it set up. So now with our extra set of hands, I got Joe helping me here. We're going to raise this up and utilize these holes. So line them up with those weld nuts. And as I mentioned, get one of these started on each side. So just kind of slide it over the muffler first. Now with this supported, I can go ahead and get the rest of our weld nut bolts in place. Now we're going to grab our longer bolts, and there's going to be 2 of them on each side, and those are going to go from the inside of the frame rail towards the outside. So make sure you're putting that conical tooth washer again with those teeth facing towards the metal, and we'll just pass this in on these 2. And you may need to kind of raise the hitch up a little bit. And then on the back side, we're going to finish it up with conical tooth washers and also the nuts included with our hardware. On the passenger side, it can get a little bit tight because of our heat shield. So what I recommend doing is take your washer and kind of put it on the far end towards the hitch and then slide this in. Sometimes the washer can give us clearance issues. And then if you have the head of the bolt flat against the heat shield, that'll make it a lot easier to slide in place. And if it does bind up like this, as long as you kind of get it started, I'm going to grab a rubber mallet and a punch and just kind of knock this in. And then we'll finish these up just like we did on our driver's side. So with all of our hardware in place, we're going to tighten these down. Now we're going to be coming back with a torque wrench, so you don't have to get too crazy here. We just want it snug and flush against the metal of the frame of the vehicle. We're going to start on the bottom, and that way it draws it up before tightening up our top bolts there. So to get these bottom ones, a 17mm socket is going to accomplish that. You're going to need a 19mm wrench to put on the head of the bolt. You can also use a socket. And then a 21mm is going to go on the nut side, and that's where we're going to want to do our tightening. So I'll go ahead and get these snug down. So now we'll come back with our torque wrench. We're going to torque down all of our hardware. The torque settings are found in the instruction manual, and this is going to be important because especially with weld nuts, you want to make sure that it's tight enough for the lifespan of the hitch, but also not too tight, putting damage or stress on that hardware. So we'll come back and do these first again. So our hitch is officially installed with everything torqued down, so we can go ahead, we'll get our exhaust put back in place. Now we can put our underbody panel back up. Now on some of the previous Tellurides, you had to kind of notch this to make it work around those bolts, but that's not the case here. It's pretty cool. This will go back in place with no problem. We'll get our spare tire put back up, but that's going to do it for the installation of your hitch. All that's left to do, load up your accessories and hit the road. And that was a look and installation of the CURT Trailer Hitch Receiver on a 2024 Kia Telluride.